they want anything, come and ask me.
Tonight, caught on tape, Mi'kmaq Fisher hopes for some justice on lobster taken from her boat. Wanting to destroy evidence, victims' family members are protesting the RCMP's plans to destroy evidence from the Robert Pickton trial.
What we proposed to government was way much more than just a science proposal. It's a vision.
And the federal government plans more funding to see the impact of climate change on the Inuit. Good evening, I'm Savannah Kelly. Welcome to APTN National News. The RCMP in British Columbia have asked the courts for permission to expunge 14,000 exhibits of evidence used against Robert Pickton in the largest serial killer investigation in Canadian history. But the request is not sitting well with family members of Pickton's victims. APTN's Tina House has this story and a warning. Some of the details may be upsetting to some viewers.
I truly believe that if these were white women, if these were their family members, there is no way that they would destroy this evidence, and there would be more people convicted. There would be more charges.
At this press conference held by Justice for Girls, family members of a few of the victims of serial killer Robert Pickton say they do not agree with the RCMP wanting to destroy 14,000 exhibits of evidence collected during the RCMP's investigation.
These cases of more than 50 women who disappeared from the downtown east side, some of whose remains were found on the Pickton farm, now stand as a stark example of the many ways that Indigenous and marginalized women and girls are failed by our justice system. The failures in these women's lives did not begin with a botched investigation or a scandalously flawed commission of inquiry. Many of these women's stories began while they were still girls, forgotten and failed by the foster care system, preyed upon by men who exploited and abused them with impunity for years before they became adults, and were handed up to predators like those on the Pickton farm.
In 2001, a rookie RCMP officer went to the Pickton farm to follow up on a firearms complaint. He found a large number of women's clothing and other personal items, so an investigation was launched. Robert Pickton was arrested after human remains and DNA were discovered all around the property. Many were confirmed to have gone missing from the downtown east side. Sarah DeVries went missing in 1998. 4 years later, her DNA was found on the Pickton farm. Her daughters, also named Sarah, spoke at the press conference.
It is incomplete. There is way more to this case than the general public knows, and families are willing or able to disclose for reasons we're not allowed to disclose. It's not uncommon knowledge that Robert Pickton didn't act alone and there were more involved. And if you look at the history of cold cases, mostly all of that evidence is kept forever, pretty much. Why, in this case, are they trying to erase the evidence?
After the RCMP investigation, Robert Pickton was charged with the murders of 26 women. The Attorney General at the time decided to try 6 of the cases and go to trial for the other 20 later on. On December 9, 2007, Pickton was convicted of second-degree murder on all 6 counts and given a life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years. The other 20 charges were stayed after it was decided there was no need to go to trial since Pickton was already in jail. Lorelei Williams' cousin Tanya Holick, along with Sarah's mother Sarah DeVries, was part of that group of 20 whose cases never went to trial. Williams says she just read the evidence that was collected in the investigation.
I forced myself to start reading it last night, and I wish I hadn't. I looked at the evidence that they have, and now my question is, are they destroying all of that evidence? And there's some evidence in there that should not be destroyed by the RCMP. It should not be destroyed.
Dr. Sasha Reed specializes in Canadian cold cases and serial killer homicides.
Despite what the RCMP may say about this being a complete investigation, it is not. It is of the utmost importance that we preserve this evidence.
The RCMP did not respond to our request for an interview, but they did say that they are not authorized to retain property indefinitely. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
A Mi'kmaq fisher was in Digby Provincial Court on Monday. She hoped to face the people who took a crate of lobster off her boat back in the summer. Angel Moore reports.
I'm here in front of the Digby Provincial Courthouse, where 3 people were expected to plead guilty or not guilty, but no one showed up. All 3 are charged for theft under $5,000, and 1 person is charged for assault. The incident was caught on tape by APTN News. You can see 4 people in a small boat loading a crate of lobster from Francis's boat. The lobster was harvested earlier that day by Cheyenne Francis of the Sabaganagati Mi'kmaq Nation under her community's moderate livelihood management plan. She came to court to face the people who took a crate of lobster off her boat last August.
Like I said, I wish that they showed up and had it done and over with, manned up about it. Most of the community members know if they want anything, come and ask me and we'll make arrangements to give whatever you need or want.
After police released photos of the suspects, 3 people turned themselves in at the Digby RCMP detachment. Police are still searching for the 4th suspect. Presiding Judge Timothy Landry issued a warrant for the arrest for a 24-year-old man from Brighton, Nova Scotia. He is also charged with assault. The others charged 34-year-old man of Brighton, Nova Scotia, whose father appeared on his behalf. The 3rd person, a 54-year-old woman of Harrietsfield, Nova Scotia. She called into court and is in the process of finding a lawyer. The police have not released the suspect's name. All 3 are scheduled to appear in court in the new year to enter their plea. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Digby, Nova Scotia.
Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu tabled a long-awaited bill to improve the quality of water on First Nations across the country. The proposed bill C-61 was created in consultation with First Nations. According to the chiefs who joined Minister Patty Hajdu at Monday's press conference, the act is a historic piece of legislation designed to meet long-standing water issues on First Nations. Minister Hajdu said the bill provides the tools for First Nations to have control over their water and ensure safe and clean drinking water.
It actually enshrines in the legislation a responsibility of the federal government to be an active partner in the appropriate level of funding that will ensure that success. And so I think that's why you're hearing feedback from First Nations people that this legislation goes leaps and bounds further than the previous legislation, where the previous legislation imposed the responsibilities without the appropriate levels of support. I would say that, it is in everyone's interest that we protect the water here.
24 hours after Minot Janot was named Quebec's first Indigenous Lieutenant Governor, Quebec's National Assembly voted to abolish the position. Janot, who is Mi'kmaq from the First Nation of Gaspé, was appointed by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The province's second largest opposition party, Quebec Solidaire, tabled the motion. It called for the end of what is described as a symbol of colonialism. Before her brief appointment, Janot was the director of the First Nations Executive Education at a Montreal business school. She previously spent 12 years serving her community as a counselor and then as a chief. One of the Inuit members of the Nutrition North Canada Advisory Board has resigned due to the federal government's continued support for Israel amid the war in Gaza. Trevor Wright has more.
Friday, Beth Kyoturk resigned from her position on the Nutrition North Advisory Board. In a letter to Northern Affairs Minister Dan Vandal, she cited Canada's support for Israel amid a worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza.
Then with everything that's happening in Palestine and the position of the current government, I just felt even more discouraged and felt like I say in the letter, that reconciliation isn't really being taken seriously and it can't be really taken seriously when we're supporting a genocide today.
Nutrition North subsidizes certain foods and non-food essentials in eligible northern communities to offset northern food costs. Moira Kotiark says she has seen some negativity about her resignation. She has mostly seen people supportive of the decision. She says others shouldn't be afraid to do the same.
And I saw this as an opportunity in my position in my life to actually speak truth to power, to say what I really mean and to say what's on my heart, and to really draw the links between colonization here in Canada and the colonization all over the world.
APTN News reached out to Northern Affairs Canada for comment, but they didn't get back to us prior to publication. Trevor Wright, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Just before we went to air, the minister's office responded saying he thanks her for her service, but didn't respond to why she was resigning. We need to take a short break. Coming up, why all 12 members of the Indigenous Advisory Council for CN Rail have resigned. Plus, several Indigenous leaders from Canada are at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Dubai.
Looking to communicate the importance of First Nations, Indigenous people playing a lead role in addressing climate change.
Welcome back to APTN National News. Several Indigenous leaders from Canada are at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Dubai. They're fighting for policies that recognize their rights to approve mining projects on their ancestral lands. More than 100 Indigenous people from around the world signed an open letter to COP28 delegates, urging them to join the fight to protect their title to their ancestral territories. The letter states that historically fossil fuel and mining companies have put profits first, and that their activities trample on human rights and destroy communities and culture. Elder Alan Adzera of the Tahltan Nation in British Columbia is one of the people who signed the letter.
I felt it was important to sign it because I am very concerned about the rate of climate change over the past few years, looking to communicate the importance of First Nations, Indigenous people playing a lead role in addressing climate change.
The federal government has announced they will be funding research into the impacts of climate change that it's having on Inuit for the next 5 years. Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, the Arctic Network, and Polar Knowledge Canada, a corporation under Crown Indigenous Relations, all announced last week they're going to work together to listen better to Inuit concerns and participation in Arctic research. The funding is coming from the Federal Strategic Science Fund. While the numbers are still being crunched, ITK says the original joint proposal was for up to $50 million, which is the figure they hope will be approved.
What we proposed to government was way much more than just a science proposal. It's a vision. It's a vision that was developed with ArcticNet, with Inuit through Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, Polar Knowledge, and with input from over 70 organizations across Canada and internationally. So a co-developed vision towards science.
All 12 members of the Indigenous Advisory Council for CN Rail have resigned due to disagreements between the group and Canadian Rail. Joining us now are co-chairs Roberta Jameson and Murray Sinclair. For joining us today, Mr. Sinclair, could you tell the role of the Indigenous Advisory Council for CN Rail?
Our responsibility as members of the Indigenous Advisory Council was to as co-chairs initially, form the council, which took us a while to find the proper personnel to do that, but then to prepare a report for the members of the board of CN outlining what they needed to do in order to establish a reconciliation initiative and to achieve reconciliation. So that was our purpose. In order to do that, we hired consultants who interviewed a number of Indigenous people about the work that we had been retained to do and what we needed to do to make it happen. And then we provided a report to the CN board, and they have our report.
And over to Roberta, why have all 12 members resigned?
Well, I will tell you that, and it's one of the most impressive and credentialed groups of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people you can assemble. You know, the likes of the head of the CCAB, Tabitha Bull, Phil Fontaine, Marie Delorme, Udlu Hansen, Mark Podlasly, I could go on. So the decision was taken not lightly, after a good deal of conversation and thought. And we really came to the conclusion that to continue our work any longer would really mislead Indigenous peoples in particular, and Canadians in general, as to CN's sincerity and authenticity to reconcile. It was a tough decision to make, but an important one.
And this last question to both of you, what changes do you hope to see following this resignation? We'll go to Murray first.
Well, we had in our statement of resignation, we indicated what we thought the weakness was in the response by CN to the plan of action that we put forward, or and the recommendations that we have put forward. And we came to the conclusion that there was an inadequate response to our proposal, and so they need to seriously consider what they need to do in order to make the reconciliation requirements set out in the TRC report happen.
And Roberta, same question, what changes would you like to see following this resignation?
Well, I would like to urge CN to the board to go back and review our 2 reports now. We've done 2, we were to do them annually, to look at the recommendations, to really take on board the fundamental importance of the apology framework. Because what we were told across the country was Indigenous peoples are very interested in having a much healthier relationship with CN, but the fundamental first step is an apology framework where CN would acknowledge and embrace its responsibility as part of the history of railway in Canada for the loss of lands to Indigenous peoples, for the fact that our people continue to see CN and railway generally as being part of those that took our children away to residential school. These things have not gone away, and CN has continued to enjoy the benefits of colonialism and so on, and we've continued to endure the loss. And so I think we were told that's a fundamental first step. Once we get that step in place, we'll build on that foundation, and all kinds of things are possible to shape the future together. But that first step, deliberate, considered, accountable, measured, sincere, is essential.
Great answer
to any
there.
Reconciliation action plan.
Well, Roberta, Murray, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
In a statement to APTN, Vice President of CN, Olivier Chouc, said CN is committed to its journey toward reconciliation, and that journey begins with a better understanding of history. He states he's grateful for the IAC's perspective. We need to step aside for one more quick break. Still to come, long-awaited license plates raising awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people have finally launched in Manitoba. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Red sky in the morning in Steinbach, Manitoba, thanks to regular contributor Dave Menzies, who shared this great sunrise photo. If you want to be featured as our photo of the day, email your pictures to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. On the east coast, 3 degrees and rain in Halifax, sunshine and +1 in Fredericton. Nain, flurries there, -11. Kuujjuaq, sunshine, -18. Quebec City, snowy and -1. Val-d'Or, 0 degrees. Peterborough, 3 degrees there. North Bay, flurries, 0 degrees. Wawa, snowy and -5. Big Trout Lake, flurries, -11. Churchill, -10 and sunny there. Norway House, -13. Brandon, -7. Princess Harbor, -11 and snow. Regina, -2, sunshine there. North Battleford, sunshine and -2 as well. La Ronge, -12 and sunny. Uranium City, snowy, -9. -3 and sunny in Fort Chip, Fort McMurray, rainy, -2. Calgary, sunshine and 2 degrees. Medicine Hat, +1. Penticton, 3 degrees, mix of sun and cloud there. Bella Coola, rainy and +2. Prince George, 0 degrees there. Rainy and +4 in Prince Rupert. Beaver Creek, -18, mix of sun and cloud. Whitehorse, 3 degrees. Wati, -5, mix of sun and cloud. Norman Wells, -15. Sax Harbor, snowy there and -20. Colville Lake, -12. Baker Lake, snowy there, -23, and now yet -24. Igloolik, -20 and sunshine there. Iqaluit, -14. In Manitoba, long-awaited license plates raising awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people have finally launched. The license plates were first proposed by MLA Bernadette Smith in October 2022. Smith has been personally affected by the MMIWG 2S epidemic with the disappearance of her sister, Claudette Osborne-Tayo. There will be 2 designs to choose from, and $30 from the sale of every plate will go to Ganikanichik, an Indigenous-led nonprofit in Winnipeg with programs that support those impacted by MMIWG2S. 6,000 plates will be available for purchase. Smith directly addressed the families of MMIWG2S at a press conference on Friday.
It is truly because of your hard work and advocacy across Canada and on the MMIWG2S movement, including today, that moments like this can be born out of your loved one's tragedy. We will never stop until our women, girls, and Two-Spirits are safe and free from violence.
And that's all the time we have for your Monday news. For news anytime, visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy Miigwech, thank you for joining us tonight. Take care and have a great night.